You good to shut this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, well, good morning, class. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope you got some rest. Hope you got to do some fun things. Hope you got your homework all caught up on. Let's see. Hope you spent some time with your family. It's always important, okay? Well, we are ready to start our second week, our first full week. And so let's get this started with a word of prayer. Lord, thank you for everything you did for us this weekend. Thank you for your direction, your guidance, and Father, just thank you for everything that you do for us on a daily basis. Help us this hour in that precious name. Amen. Okay. It just dawned on me that I was not totally hooked up, so hopefully we are now. And now you need to see. Okay, let me backtrack here. Let me escape. And we'll do it again. There we go. Okay. Okay, now we're ready to go. Okay. Okay. So, lesson 4. I believe you had homework, and I believe it was due today. Okay? So, make sure that you get that turned into that tray, and and we'll get that graded and get it recorded. Okay? Get everything done that you need to. Stay up on things. Now, tomorrow, I failed to let you know on Friday, but I've given you the study sheet, so I feel okay doing this. You've got a quiz tomorrow, quiz 1. So make sure you are ready to study. You're studying that, ready for that to go on tomorrow morning. Again, quiz number 1. Okay? Now I think maybe in your notes it should be for lesson. Are we 4 or 3? Maybe we're 3 still. Maybe that's why. Okay. Hang on. I got to do a switcheroo here. Okay. We'll close that and go to lesson 3. I read my lesson plans wrong, and so I was one lesson ahead of you. Lesson 3. There we go. Okay, so still, I don't want to do that yet. So still you have a quiz tomorrow, okay? The reason I'm confused is because on last week's lesson plans I had lesson 3 as Friday's notes. And we didn't get to that far, so that just kind of put my mind into a little bit of a spin. But hey, I'm 62, and no, I'm just kidding. We're good now. We're good to go. Okay, take out a piece of paper, and we're going to do it a little differently this year, or this we're going to try this and see if this works. So instead of you turning in the paper every time, wasting a piece of paper, having a small piece of paper, this way you can multi-use it. While I am lecturing, okay, Mr. Moyer, if you, at the end of this quiz, after we get done grading it, the students will hold up their hand and say what the amount of fingers that they got wrong, or let's do it. This is going to be easiest. The amount that they got right. Okay, So in this quiz, there is 6 questions. So they would hold up 6 fingers based upon, or however many they got right. And if you wouldn't mind just taking on a piece of paper, writing that down today, and that way I can keep track of it a little bit easier. Let's try this today and see how it goes. And this might be the easiest way to do it versus turning in those papers, and that way they can reuse them, okay? Let's give it a whirl and see one of those learning curves that we need to get through, okay? Everybody should have a piece of paper out, and I don't want to create too much of a disturbance while the notes are going on, but I think we possibly could get that done real quick, or even after the quiz. I'll just hesitate a little bit and before I hit my notes. Distant learners, again, just send me a picture of your graded sheet and how many you got right, and then I'll get recorded from that perspective. Okay? Okay. Ready, set. Here's your quiz. Okay, you should have all 6 done. Again, based upon the time, however many you have completed, that's how many you would grade. Okay, so if you don't get 6 done, but you got 5, then you would hold up 5 for the amount that you got right if you got them all correct. Okay, so here's your answers. Okay, I will give you number 2. Sorry about that. 2 is a freebie. Okay, the last part of that is inference. Okay, number 2. My fault. I thought I had things adjusted. So again, a learning curve, and we will. I'll just double check those things before class the next day. Number 2 is a freebie. Okay, so. Okay, so get, go and let Mr. Moyer know, and then we'll begin in just a minute. Okay. Once again, these will go for extra credit on your next assignment. Okay. Okay. I'm going to start in with obviously we're going to start every day with a review after our quiz. So review question number 1. What is the 6 steps to the scientific method? Okay. They are: state the problem, gather information, formulate a hypothesis, test that hypothesis, record and analyze everything that's going on, and then at the end state your conclusion. What's the use of science to solve practical problems? Excuse me, what do we use basically to solve these? That is technology. Okay? That's it for the review. There was not too much yet that we've gone over. Okay? So we're going to start into scientific reasoning today. Okay? Now, this is going to be a kind of a start, okay, towards your practical thinking process. When you get into older grades, you're going to have to do a lot of reasoning given in algebra and geometry and all that. Even further into upper grade science, we're going to deal with a lot of these too. But scientific reasoning, some general facts about that are, the facts that scientists use for reasoning are to develop a hypothesis from known scientific laws and theories and his own observations. So to develop those hypotheses, these are facts of scientists. Second is to analyze the results of an experiment to determine whether it supports the hypothesis. You always got to analyze things. Does this make sense? Is this a logical way? Is this a proper way to do this experiment? So you're always thinking, okay? And now we're putting those thoughts down on paper so you can kind of see why you're doing what you're doing. A practical understanding of logic, okay? Logic is the study of reasoning. Is that a logical statement? Is that logical? Is what they say about evolution, is it logical? Could it really happen? That is essential for any scientist to do on any given subject. And I just picked evolution because as a creationist, that's what, and a creation and a science teacher, kind of that's what I'm teaching against. Presenting a Christian's worldview of it, but making you try to understand and see logically, does this even make sense? And before I even say it, a lot of times in the class, a student will say, Mr. Brown, that doesn't even make sense, okay? And it doesn't a lot of times for those situations. Number 3, the general process of reasoning is the same no matter what you are reasoning about, okay? We reason about things every time the same way, okay? Just different topics. The 2 ideas that proper reasoning always involves are these: taking evidence, the facts that are already known, then using those facts to make an inference. An inference is a conclusion based upon reasoning from evidence. That was question number 2 on your quiz, okay? And so an inference, I infer that, we don't use this term a lot, but we do it. We infer that something's true or false because of a conclusion based upon reasoning of that evidence that we see, that we know, that we've read, okay? Number 5, the 2 main branches of logic are deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning. Get those written down and then we'll go on. Let me get a drink. Okay, so let's start off talking about deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning is reasoning from evidence. Sorry, it is something our computer looks like it's not going through. We're back here. We're back still on the two main branches of Thane's, and that's deductive reasoning. So I'm not exactly sure why. We just have had a computer glitch again. So we'll slow down. Okay? So, on your notes, follow along. Number 1A would be deductive reasoning. And if you want, can just follow along in your notes. Deductive reasoning is reasoning from evidence to a more specific conclusion. Okay? Number 1 in parentheses, deductive reasoning is used to combine your known facts to discover a new fact that is their logical consequence. Okay? Now remember, I believe it was in this class. If not, I kind of get things mixed up a little bit. But you have the if and thens. Okay? The if this, then this is going to happen. The consequent is the then. The antecedent is the if. So if something happens, then there has to be some kind of a consequent or quence that occurs. That's deductive reasoning. Example. Thunder is always caused by lightning in thunderstorms. Okay? So, if there is thunder, then there's a thunderstorm somewhere close. Letter B. Someone who hears thunder can thus infer, that's the inference, they can infer that there is a thunderstorm even if he does not see the clouds of lightning. Okay? Now, that last part. There may be a storm an hour away. Okay? And yet to us, they just look like cumulonimbus clouds. Okay? Big puffy, but yet dark and gray. Okay? We assume that maybe, we infer that there's probably a storm over there, but we're not sure. But then all of a sudden we may even see lightning, but we hear the thunder, and so we infer that there's a storm somewhere close. Okay? Okay, so we are still having a frozen computer, or at least it looks like it from my side of it. Second part to this, the proposition. That's your statement of fact. Number 1, I hear thunder, and if there's thunder, then there's a thunderstorm someplace. Both of those statements are propositions. I'm proposing that, what I'm telling you is true. And because I'm hearing it, it's true. So I'm telling you, I'm proposing to you that we've got these two situations going on. The if and the then. Number 1B2, there's a hypothetical proposition. Now, don't start freaking out on all these scientific terms. Look at the term. Remember what we said, a hypothesis is an educated guess or a realistic assumption of something happening? A hypothetical proposition is supposition or supposing that something's happening. Hypothetical. You've always heard somebody say, let me, hypothetically speaking, okay? And they go on and tell you what they're thinking. Hypothetical. True or false, they're not telling you either one, but they're trying to get you to think, and it could be, it may not be. That's hypothesis. That's hypothetical. A hypothesis. Your thoughts of the conclusion could be, or it may not be. Okay? A hypothetical proposition. That's the if-then statement. If something happens, then this. Okay, I was a little ahead of my notes. Okay? But here it is. Number one, the antecedent is the if part. And the consequent is the then. If something happens, then there is going to be this. Okay? And we're going to get a little bit more, but there's if there's going to be one, there's going to be another. So if there's the antecedent, there's always going to be a consequent. Okay? Okay. Looks like we're still frozen. Okay, so we'll just slowly, hopefully you're getting all this. Okay. So, affirming the antecedent, there's two types of inferences with a hypothetical proposition. First is the affirming the antecedent. Affirming the antecedent. Okay, I'm trying to think when we started. I don't have my calendar with me, so I'm not sure. My schedule, I mean. So I can't remember when this class period ends. Is it 9:40, 9:50? Can't remember. Mr. Moyer, oh, never mind, I found it. Okay, we are 10 o'clock. Okay, good, got a little bit of time. Sorry about that. Okay, so affirming the antecedent. When we know that the antecedent is true, the only possibility to the consequent is also true. So if the antecedent, if the if is true, the then is going to be true. If there is thunder, then there is a thunderstorm nearby. So there is thunder, therefore there's a thunderstorm someplace. Second part to that, second type of inference, is the denying the consequent. Okay? Denying the consequent. When we know that the consequent is false, then the antecedent must be false. If there's thunder, then there is a thunderstorm nearby. So there is not a thunderstorm nearby, therefore there's no thunder. We can't have no thunderstorm and then all of a sudden we have the sound of thunder. Unless somehow it was artificially made by someone in the room or in the area or whatever. And maybe what you heard wasn't thunder, it was just a car backfiring or something. Okay? But if there's no thunderstorm, then there's got to be no thunder. Okay? So the if and then have to match each other. That's denying the consequent. So no inference can be made from knowing that the antecedent, this is letter D, is false or that the consequent is true. Okay, secondly, you have science and deduction. Okay? The scientific method requires using deductive reasoning to make a prediction based on hypothesis. So you must have a hypothesis in order to advance the scientific method. Okay? Most hypotheses cannot be tested directly. Instead, they are tested by testing their predictions. Oops. Assuming that a hypothesis is true in general, it is reasonable to infer that it will be the true for the consequent. If the prediction turns out to be false, then we can infer by denying the consequent that the hypothesis is also false. Okay? Now, so you do all this as you're doing your experiment. We're just putting it down into words so that you can see what you're doing. That was deductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is this. Number one, that's inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning. It's reasoning from a specific evidence to a more general conclusion. Okay, secondly, the ultimate purpose of inductive reason is to determine cause and effect. To determine cause and effect. To determine cause and effect. Determining a cause by induction depends upon comparing different situations. Simplest way, this is letter B, simplest way to do this is the method of difference. Okay? Method of difference. Definition to that is, that's the method of inductive reasoning that involves comparing two situations that are the same except for one factor. Method of difference. Difference, what's the difference between two things? So what's the difference between all this? One factor is in the comparison. Okay? Method of difference. Number 3, science and induction. If the prediction on which an experiment is based turns out to be false, we can then infer that the hypothesis is also false. But for the inference to be correct, the experiment itself must be designed to follow the rules of induction. The method of difference, comparing the two, is the foundation for the design of many scientific experiments. You're comparing all the time. The method of difference is the foundation for the design of many, okay? Inductive reasoning can never prove a hypothesis beyond all doubt. Number 3C1 in parentheses is repeatable or repeatability. That's the ability to repeat an experiment multiple times, keeping all factors as similar as possible between experiments while getting essentially the same results. Being able to reproduce that experiment, that's repeatability. An experiment must always be repeatable. And it also must be reproducible. That's the ability of others to reach the same conclusion by performing an experiment themselves under different conditions and by performing other experiments that test the same hypothesis. Okay? Reproducible or reproducibility. That's 3C, number 2. Number 4, the post hoc fallacy is when using inductive reasoning, it is important to avoid post hoc fallacy, which is logic error in which someone assumes that a change in one factor caused the change in another factor just because the second one occurred first. A post hoc fallacy is very easy to make when performing simple observations of nature. Post hoc fallacy is P-O-S-T, it's three different words, P-O-S-T, H-O-C, F-A-L-L-A-C-Y. Post hoc fallacy. We can avoid this fallacy by testing their ideas with experiments based upon proper induction. Okay? Now, I ran through a lot. I kind of hurried right there at the end because I wanted to make sure we got all this in. But don't freak out on these terms, okay? You basically do all this. We just have to put it into mindful things. So, your homework tonight is to read pages 9 to 10. Have a quiz. You're going to have a quiz tomorrow, so you're going to prepare for quiz number 1. Okay? Quiz 1, and then read pages 9 to 10 just so that you know where or what we're talking about tomorrow. Okay? I'll be down there in the classroom in just a few minutes. So distance learners, make sure you're ready to take that quiz also tomorrow. That's it. That concludes this hour, and we'll see you later.
Okay, class, we're going to go ahead and get started. Go ahead and take out your literature. We're going to get started with literature before we take our grammar quiz. I hope you guys studied your manuscript form. And then we're going to go ahead and take that at the end of the class period. But go ahead and turn to page number 19. You guys should have read that for homework. Yesterday or Friday, we went over Lindbergh, and I want you guys to remember that the lines to know on page 17, which was page 17, with exploding jubilation, they welcomed him to France. Make sure you guys remember that. On Thursday, we went over The Ransom of Red Chief by O. Henry. Make sure you guys know who O. Henry is. And then he's an author to know. Make sure that you know what a climax is, which is the highest point of intensity in a story. Make sure you guys know what, make sure you guys know that line from Lindbergh. Make sure you guys know on number 19, let's go over that today, okay? Page 19, Voyagers by Henry Van Dyke. We're going to talk about a rhyme scheme. Whoops. Give me 1 second. That's my husband. Give me 1 moment, you guys. It's not working. All right, we got it working, okay? Go ahead and turn to page 19. If you guys go ahead and look up at the top, end rhyme, okay? Let's read that together. Rhymes that come at the end of lines of poetry are called end rhymes. End rhymes are marked by using letters of the alphabet to identify corresponding sounds within a stanza. The first ending sound is designated with an A, and all other end rhymes with the same sound are also designated an A. The next end rhyme in the stanza is marked with a B, etc. When a new stanza begins, the designation starts over again with an A. The end rhyme develops the poem's rhyme scheme, okay? So that's one of our first terms that we do need to know. Make sure you write this down. Rhyme scheme. If you guys don't get this on the slide, again, it's on page 407, so you guys can reference to that in your literature books. Rhyme scheme is the pattern of an end rhyme used in a poem and denoted by assigning each new sound, which is the rhyme, a lowercase letter of the alphabet. So look at your poem Voyagers, okay? That's kind of what we're going to explain. So this is a rhyme scheme, which is what the end rhyme is, what pattern the end rhyme is. That's your rhyme scheme. Your end rhyme, make sure you guys also know this. The end rhyme is the repetition of an accented vowel sound and all the succeeding sounds in which words come at the end of each line. So basically this, look at your poem Voyagers, okay? That first stanza, O maker of the mighty deep, whereon our vessels fare, above our life's adventure keep thy faithful watch and care, okay? So look at your first line, O maker of the mighty deep. That's one rhyme, so we're going to give that a letter A. The second line is whereon our vessels fare. We're going to give that a letter B, okay? So A and B. The next line, above our life's adventures keep. So keep rhymes with deep, so we're going to give that an A. And then thy faithful watch and care. So care rhymes with fair, so that's the letter B. Does that make sense? So A, like the first line and the third line, they rhyme. So deep and keep, they rhyme, so that'll be an A. And then the second and the fourth line rhyme, fair and care, so then that would be a B. So A, B, A, B. Look at that fifth line. In thee we trust, whate'er befall, thy sea is great, our boats are small. So since that is in the same line, but it doesn't rhyme with A or B, we would give that one a C. So the A, B, C, C is your rhyme scheme, and what type of rhyme is your end rhyme, okay? So that's basically what end rhyme and rhyme scheme is. Go ahead and look at your poem description, or your author description. Meet the author at the bottom. Henry Van Dyke, okay? Henry Van Dyke was he accomplished much during his lifetime. He was a passionate American author. He was a clergyman and an educator. He was a professor of literature at Princeton University. All you guys really need to know, he is an American author, and he wrote Voyagers. He was a diplomat during the war. You don't really need to know. This is just some random facts about Henry Van Dyke. He was known for his short stories, his poems, and his hymns. But make sure you guys know he was an American author and that he wrote Voyagers, okay? So we're going to go ahead and look at our poem, Voyagers. We know that it was written by Henry Van Dyke. If you guys read this, we kind of can compare it to our lives. So often in this life, we find ourselves worrying about the future, and we don't really know what's ahead, and we are scared of the unknown. And as children of God, we know that Jesus Christ already knows our tomorrow, and we know that he holds it in his hands, right? So in this poem, the author is praying about the future, and he's praying about his life, and that he's praying that God will bring him home, okay? Number one, like to think it through, what are some of the things that the narrator prays for in this poem, okay? If you guys read on the first line, he says, in thee we trust where'er befall, thy sea is great, our boats are small. Then that second paragraph, we know not where the secret tides will help us or delay, nor where the lurking tempest hides, nor where the fogs are gray. We trust in thee, whate'er befall, thy sea is great, our boats are small. So I think in that line, he's praying for protection because they don't know where the secret tides or the lurking tempest. Lurking is, it's sneaking up. Maybe the storm is coming. It's not quite there yet, but the storm is coming and they don't know where it is. But he wants protection from that storm. If you guys look in line 15, let not our hearts of courage fall before the voyage is o'er. Obviously, he's praying for courage during that journey. Another thing he's praying for is in those last two paragraphs, when homeward bound we gladly turn, oh, bring us safely there. You guys look in that last stanza. We seek our final port in thee, oh, bring us home at last. So he's referring to a safe voyage home. That's one thing he's praying for, is a safe voyage home, okay? The theme is trusting God with your life. In Psalms 56:3, we see that this is an occurring theme as well. Psalms 56 verse 3 says, what time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. And we've known that verse a lot. We've said it in Sunday schools. If you guys been to Sunday school, what time I am afraid, I will trust in thee, okay? So Henry Van Dyke is comparing his life to a sea voyage and ask God for protection, okay? The theme is learning to trust God with your life. Make sure you guys know this line. Look at line number 5 In thee we trust, whate'er befall, thy sea is great, our boats are small. So that's a line to know, okay? The next one is travel, okay? Robert Louis Stevenson, make sure you guys know who that is. Sorry, give me 1 second. Robert Louis Stevenson, I'm going to go ahead and close this. Robert Louis Stevenson on page number 20. Look at your author to know, meet the author. Robert Louis Stevenson was a Scottish novelist. Make sure you guys know that. Robert Louis Stevenson was Scottish and Henry Van Dyke was American. All right? Robert Louis Stevenson was a Scottish novelist, essayist, and poet. Born in the coastal city of Edinburgh, Stevenson grew to love the sea. As a child, Stevenson developed lung problems that affected him for the rest of his life, forcing him to move from place to place to try to find a climate that agreed with his state of health. He and his family finally settled in Samoa, an island in the South Pacific. There, Stevenson, whom the natives called Tusitala, teller of tales, died and was buried by the Samoans. Several of his works, such as his novels, Kidnapped, Treasure Island, and The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and his book of poetry, A Child's Garden of Verses, became classics of English literature, okay? So, Travel is actually one of those poems in A Child's Garden of Verses, okay? So, hopefully this works now. Okay, so Travel, it's written by Robert Louis Stevenson. It's from his work, A Garden of Verses. We'll see that the theme is longing to travel the world, and we notice its use of rhythm in here, okay? Stevenson in this poem expressively describes his love of travel. So we've noticed like his family, they moved to Samoa. In this poem, we notice that he's describing places around the world. Look in that first paragraph, okay? We notice the use of rhythm. I should like to rise and go where the golden apples grow, where below another sky parrot islands anchored lie, and watched by cockatoos and goats, lonely Crusoes building boats, where in sunshine reaching out, eastern cities miles about. So you can see throughout this line that it's all rhythm, and it's I should like to rise and go. So rhythm, you guys, make sure you guys know what rhythm is. Rhythm is the regular occurrence of sound or motion shown by using accented and unaccented symbols, okay? So in that first line, I should like to rise and go. I should like to rise and go. I is accented, like is accented, rise is accented, go is accented. So it's I should like to rise and go. That's basically what rhythm is throughout this poem, okay? If you look at the think it through, what are some of the places to which the narrator wants to travel? Well, look at your work. Look at line number 6 actually, lonely Crusoes. That's actually referring to individuals living on an isolated island, a reference to Robinson Crusoe. I don't know if you guys who know Robinson Crusoe is, but he's someone who was shipwrecked and he was by himself on an island. And then look at a couple lines down at line number 8. Eastern cities miles about are with mosque and minaret. What do you guys think that is? Look at your verses, or look at your definitions. Mosque, which is a Muslim place of worship. Minaret, which is a mosque high tower from which Muslims are summoned to prayer. So I think that's talking about the Middle East. Look in line number 10, among sandy gardens set. It's sandy in the Middle East. And then if you guys look at line number 12, where the Great Wall around China goes, we know the Great Wall of China is in China, so he's talking about the Middle East. He's talking about China. In lines number 18, you can see England, the pygmy hunter's hut in line 20, where the naughty crocodile lies and blinks in the Nile. If you guys know where the Nile River is, that's in Africa, so he's talking about Africa. And then different things like that. Line number 46, the last line of Old Egyptian Boys. So he's talking about the different places where he wants to go, okay? Last thing, make sure you guys, again, know Robert Louis Stevenson. He was a Scottish novelist, an essayist, and a poet. Love of traveling is reflected in his works. And then he's known for Kidnapped, Treasure Island, and then our poem, Travel. So make sure you guys know who Robert Louis Stevenson is, and make sure you guys know who Henry Van Dyke is, okay? If you guys have any questions, let me know about those. Go ahead and take out your grammar books. We're gonna review for the quiz. Actually, take out your poem. We're gonna go through that one more time. Your poem is Footprints in the Sand, all right? Let's go ahead and say that together. Make sure you say it out loud. Footprints on the Sands by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, okay? Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. Footprints that perhaps another sailing o'er life's solemn main, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother, seeing shall take heart again. Let us then be up and doing, with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labor and to wait. Okay, make sure you guys know that. We're going to take a quiz over that pretty soon, but go ahead and put those away. That's our poem. Make sure you guys are studying list 1A. We are going to have that quiz tomorrow. Actually, not 1A, our first quiz. We're going to have that tomorrow, so make sure you guys know the definitions of your vocabulary words. Chamois, which is a soft leather used for cleaning. Guile, skillful or cunning use of deceit. Integrity, moral soundness, honesty. Irrepressible, impossible to restrain or control. Meticulous, acting with extreme care for details. Obscurity, the condition of being unknown. Perspective, way of looking at or thinking about something. Scrutinize, to closely examine. Steadfast, firmly established, unwavering. Tolerate, to allow without interference. Okay, go ahead and put those away and prepare for a quiz. Mr. Moyer has those quizzes on the desk and he will pass those out. Make sure you guys have a paper to cover your answers. Put away all your grammar books. Those of you on distance learning, if you do not have your quiz, let me know and then I can send it over to you. And then make sure you guys text a picture to me or email me a picture, okay? So make sure you guys take that today. If you guys have any questions, I'll be with you guys in the class in a few minutes, but go ahead and take the quiz once Mr. Moyer passes those out, okay?
All right, good morning. Welcome to pre-algebra. We're going to be looking at 1.3 factors. 1.3 factors. So in your textbook, please go to page 11. Page 11 of your textbook, and we're going to jump right into it. The factors of a number are all the different numbers that divide into it evenly. For example, the factors of 6 are 1, 2, 3, and 6. The number 4 is not a factor because it does not divide into 6 evenly. You would get a remainder. The divisibility rules shown here will help you determine the factors of a number. This chart is also available on page 11 of your textbook. Once a factor is found using the divisibility rules, another factor can be found by dividing the original number by that factor to create a pair of factors. And we'll illustrate that here in a minute. Notice below that the factors of 110 can be found using the divisibility rules. That can be found using the divisibility rules are 2, 5, and 10. After finding factor pairs, the complete list of factors can be written in order from least to greatest. All right, so if we take the number 110, okay, well, first of all, we know 2 can go into 110, and so we would get the factor pair, first of all, of 1 times 110. That's the obvious one. And then 2, and in order to find the other factor, we would divide. So 2 goes into 10 5 times with 1 left over. Bring down the 0. 2 goes into 10 5 times. So 2 times 55, if I can find the cursor, 2 times 55 would be the next one. Okay, 3 would not work because 1 plus 1 equals 2, and 2 is not divisible by 3. Then moving on, 4. 4 does not work because you cannot divide 4 into 10. All right, so that makes that pretty straightforward. 5, on the other hand, does work, and so 5 times, and so 5 goes into 10 2 times with 1 left over. Bring down the 0, and 5 goes into 10 2 more times, so we get 22. Okay, and so as we continue on here, then we keep going. 6, well, it's not divisible by 3, so that rules that out. 9, it's not divisible by 9 because it's not divisible by 3. Okay, in order to be divisible by 9, it has to first be divisible by 3, so that rules that out too. And the number does end in 0 though, so we can get 10 times 11. Okay, because when we divide 110 by 11 or by 10, we get 11. And once we start where we would start going past our smallest factor on the right hand side, okay, so my next number to try would be 11. Well, that obviously wouldn't work. Okay, and so these are all the factors. I would just write it in the list 1, 2, 5, 10, 11, 22, 55, and 110 to find the entire factorization of a number. Now, factors are great and all, but usually what we care about are the prime factors. And so what we can do is we can check the prime factors between 1 and 100 in order to go ahead and do that. So the first question you're probably asking is, what is a prime number? Well, a prime number is a number that is only divisible by 1 and itself. Okay, so in this case, 2 is only divisible by 1 and 2. 3 is only divisible by 1 and 3. 5 is only divisible by 1 and 5. 7 is only divisible by 1 and 7, and so on down this list. This chart is also available on page 11 of your textbook. Composite numbers have more than 2 factors. For example, 4, not only can it be divided by 1 and 4, but we can also divide it by 2, and so on. 2 is the only even prime number. Finally, one last thing to mention here, okay? The numbers 0 and 1 are neither prime nor composite, okay? 0 and 1 are considered exceptions, mostly because 0, we could divide it by anything. Okay, and still get 0, okay? If I have 0 cookies to share among 3 friends, everyone still has 0 cookies. So that's kind of useless. And then 1, well, everything's divisible by 1. So for the sake of so the fundamental theorem of arithmetic continues to work, 1 is considered neither prime nor composite. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on through there. So any number past 0 and 1 would be eligible to be prime. You'll notice the first 2 numbers past that are, and it's not until the third one in that where we get one that's composite. All right, so that's all well and good, but now we need to talk about common factors. Okay, a common factor, oops, I jumped ahead here. All right, a common factor is a factor that is shared by 2 or more numbers. The number 4 is a common factor of 8 and 12 because it divides evenly into both 8 and 12. Okay, and so anything like that where the number can be divided into both and evenly, would be a common factor. The number 3 would not be a common factor of 8 and 12 because 3 does not divide into 8. It divides into 12, but it does not divide into 8, therefore it's not common. Okay? Now, although two numbers may not necessarily be prime, they may be prime to each other, or what we call relatively prime. Remember, relatively means compared to something else. Okay? Numbers that are relatively prime share no common factors except for one. For example, 10 and 21 are both composite numbers. They're not on this list. We can divide them by things, but they have no common factors, so they are considered relatively prime. Okay? If you want to see an example of factors there on page 11, you can. However, 7 and 21 would not be relatively prime because they both have a common factor of 7. Okay, so all you need is 1 to make that work. Now, let's talk about prime factorization. All right, prime factorization is a method to get all the prime numbers out of a number, basically. The fundamental theorem of arithmetic states that every number can be uniquely factored into primes, which is why 1 cannot be considered a prime, by the way, because then we could just keep multiplying by 1. So we're going to go through and look at how to find the prime factorization. Now, one thing I will mention right off the bat here. The book mentions two methods. One is a factor tree, the other is division by primes. I will only teach division by primes. It is all I will ever use in this class. If you like factor trees and you love factor trees and you don't want to give them up, you don't have to. They're a perfectly valid option. I just don't like them. Okay? So you're welcome to use them, but I'm going to focus on factor trees here. As a matter of fact, it's the only method I'm going to deal with because after pre-algebra, we stop even talking about factor trees. Okay? So I just kind of started a little early. Okay, so we're going to do what's called division by primes, and it kind of looks like upside down division. So let's start out with 200. All right, we're told to find the prime factorization of 200, so we'll just take 200, and we'll go and take the prime factorization of that. So the way we do this is we start going through our list of prime numbers and finding the lowest one that would go into it. Now, I've had teachers in the past try to tell me, no, you should start with the highest one because it saves you more time. You're going to get the exact same number of division problems. Okay, that's the whole point of prime factorization, is that you're going to end up with the exact same factors no matter which way you approach it. So why not make the individual divisions easier? Okay, and if someone wants to argue with me about that later, we can, but I'll prove it to you if you need to. So we start with the smallest prime. The smallest prime is 2. So we're going to check, does 2 divide into 200? And the answer, of course, here is yes. It's an even number. So 2, as soon as I can find my mouse, there we go. 2 goes into 200 100 times. Okay, and then I keep using it until it stops working. So does 2 go into 100? Yes. And we get 50. Well, will 2 go into 50? The answer, of course, is yes, and we get 25. I'm just doing division. I'm just stacking it. Okay, so you notice we're not showing all the other work because everything has to divide evenly. That's the whole point. Now, does 2 go into 25? No. Okay, so then I move on to the next prime. The next prime is 3. Does 3 go into 25? Well, let's see. 2 plus 5 is 7. 7 is not divisible by 3, so therefore 25 is not divisible by 3. Okay, the next prime, 5. Is this divisible by 5? Well, yes, it ends in a 5, so we'll go ahead and do that method. So 5 goes into 25 5 times. As soon as I hit a prime number, I'm done. Okay, I got to a prime number, there's nothing that can go into 5. So the prime factorization of this number, okay, all eyes on the screen, okay, so you guys see this because every year I end up fighting like 3 or 4 students, not literally, but we kind of keep going back and forth because I'll say write the prime factors and they'll just write 2 and 5. And they'll do that like 90% of the year. That's not the prime factorization, okay? The prime factorization is to list everything, so pay attention. Everything on the outside of division bars gets written down. So we get 2 times 2 times 2 times 5 times 5. You're like, okay, Mr. S, now I know what's next. We got exponents. You don't know about those yet. You can't use them in this section. Sorry. Okay, so for right now, that's our answer. I'll talk to you guys later about how to simplify. You're like, well, we can go through and multiply those. Yes, but that would defeat the whole point. The whole point was to get it down to its prime numbers. Okay, people start trying to simplify this, and it's like, no, the whole point is to find out what makes up 200. Okay, so 200 is made up of the primes, 2 times 2 times 2 times 5 times 5. This is the correct way to write prime factorization. It's not commas, it's not and, it's not separated by words, and it's not just listing 2 comma 5. Okay, it's writing 2 times 2 times 2 times 5 times 5. That is a prime factorization. I will show you guys how to simplify that tomorrow when we talk about exponents. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Let's move on to the next problem, and I'll move a little quicker. 4,600 is what we're told to find the prime factorization of. Now again, your book shows you an example of a factor tree here. I'm going to focus on division by primes, or upside down division as it's often called. And so I'm going to use upside down division because it's what I prefer. Okay, and again, we stop using factor trees after this class. So we're going to go straight to just not using factor trees. All right, so 4,600. Okay, I only don't include the comma here because it can start to look like a 1 very quickly. All right, so again, I start with my smallest prime. You say, but Mr. S, that's divisible by 10. Is 10 a prime number? Okay, I have people argue with me about this every year. Okay, 10 is not a prime number, so we can't use it. So we always start with the smallest prime. So 2 does work because we have an even number. 2 goes into 4 2 times. 2 goes into 6 3 times. And then the rest are zeros. Now, if you ever need to separate out the division off to the side, okay, let's say you couldn't do that in your head for some reason, okay, and that's fine. That's nothing to worry about here, okay. There's nothing wrong with doing this off to the side. Okay, there's nothing wrong with doing that off to the side, but overall we need to be showing it upside down. So you can just pull individual problems out if you need to. That's perfectly fine. I just don't. Okay, so that's just what we're doing there. Okay, so then, does 2 still work? Well, the answer is yes. It's still an even number. So 2 goes into 2 one time. 2 goes into 3 one time with 1 left over. So we say 2 goes into 10 5 times. And then there's nothing left over, so we just get a 0. This is often called short division, okay, because we shorten the amount of math we're showing. But that right there is what we're doing. Again, if you needed to separate it out, you can. Then we're going to go ahead and 2 will still work, so I'm going to keep going. 2 goes into 11 5 times with 1 left over. Okay, so 2 goes into 15. Let me see here. 7 times with 1 left over. And so then, because there's 1 left over, I'm going to say 2 into 10, not 2 into 0. 2 into 10, 5 times. Well, now all of a sudden, 2 is not going to work. Okay, so I have 2 options, and this is kind of a personal choice kind of deal. I can go ahead and check if 3 works, and by the way, no, it doesn't. Or I can see that it ends in 5 and just start dividing by 5, okay, because I know for a fact that's going to work. That's a matter of preference, because dividing by 5 is fairly simple as well. So some people just prefer, hey, I see it ends in a 5, I'm going to start dividing by 5s. Go for it. That's fine. Again, just trying to keep the division easier. Okay, 3 is not going to work because 5 plus 5 is 10, plus 7 is 17. 17 is not divisible by 3. So we're going to go ahead and go into and do 5. So 5 goes into 5 one time with nothing left over. So 5 goes into 7 one time with 2 left over. So now, instead of 5 goes into 5, I'm going to say 5 goes into 25 because I got to bring what's left over. So 5 goes into 25 5 times. Well, 5 will still work, so I'm going to do that again. 5 goes into 10 2 times with 1 left over. So 5 goes into 15 3 times. Now, 23 is a prime number. This is why you guys need to be familiar with that list of prime numbers on page 11. Because now that I'm at hit 23, I'm done. Okay? And again, I'm going to write down everything outside a division problem. So I have 2 times 2 times 2 times 5 times 5 times 23. And this would be my correct answer for my prime factorization. Even if I'm just asked to list the prime numbers, I'm giving the prime factorization. I'm giving this type of answer. All right, I hope that makes sense to you. If not, feel free to ask questions either through email or my Google Voice number that I gave out. But in practice 1.3, that is what you guys are working on right now. That is classwork. And if you are in the Distance Learning Center, I will be checking to make sure practice 1.3 is done before you're allowed to go to homework 1.3. Your homework tonight is homework 1.3, which will include some review on this classwork. Okay, but the classwork is really your chance to get practice in. And then finally, one last thing, quiz 1 is tomorrow. So distance learners, I'll be getting you guys information about that as far as how we're going to handle quizzes in this class. But quiz 1 is 1.1 through 1.2, and that is tomorrow. One last note, and I want to just mention this briefly. You need to make sure that you have signed back up into Google Classroom using the brand new account I gave you on Friday. If you keep joining with the account with whatever personal account, I'm going to keep kicking you out of the class. Okay? You have to use the account that I gave you for Google Classroom, or else everything doesn't work. Okay? So that's a limitation of Google Classroom. I wish I'd understood that at the beginning, but I understand it now, and so we're going to keep moving on with it. So I think so far everyone's gotten it situated. Do not go back and redo old work. If it was already missing for you, please go through and fill it in. But if you already had it and got a grade back for it, don't worry about it. I have the grades still, and I will make sure that carries over. All right? You guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys later.
Hello, hello. I believe everything's working. I hope everyone is well. I do have some graded homework and quiz for everyone once I'm down there to pass back. If you did get below a 60%, it is your responsibility to get that seen by your parents and signed by your parents, and then return it the next day to receive credit. If you have a 60 or below and do not get it signed and turn it in the next day, then you will receive 10 points less than you already have. So please do that. That's accountability for you as a student to work harder. I'm sorry, fixing the camera a little bit. Work a little bit harder and have accountability to yourself, but also to your parents. Last week, we did have homework. I believe it was page 13, section review 2.2. So right now, you'll pull that out, turn that into the front, please, and I will collect that once I get up there. Also, pull out your notes, and we will begin. Last week, we were talking about the beginning with God's plan for mankind, and then we talked about how they all, after the flood, they all went to this area named Plain of Shinar, or also known as Summer. In that place, people grew a place called Tower of Babel, and they were dispersed. We learned the word dispersion, and how dispersion, it made things complicated, or God made things complicated because they were going against His will, and so they couldn't all speak the same language. They weren't able to understand each other, so they were dispersed throughout the earth. And then we talked about what does BC and AD stand for. We had that on our quiz. Before the birth of Christ and in the year of our Lord. We learned about the lowercase c, it's circa or approximately. Then we learned how Christ's first coming was the greatest turning point of history. And we went to the Fertile Crescent, talked about the two rivers that flow near there, Euphrates and Tigris. Then we talked about those in the line of Ham, Hamatic. And as we went on, we talked about Sargon, and the wheel was first used by Sumerians. And we went all the way down, we learned all the way down to cuneiform, which is a wedge-shaped writing of Sumerians. And Sumerians were the ones who started the first recordings of history, other than the Bible, obviously, but they used tablets of stone or clay, and they would use a stylus, which is a sharp-edged object, whether, a stick, a rock, something to write in the pictures or something that they use, whether in a pictograph or something, an idea with ideograph or anything like that. But we're going to start right up where we left off in 2.2. Again, pull out your homework and make sure you have that turned in so I can collect it when I get up there. But we're going to start off right where we left off. And today we're talking about the Sumerian religion. The Sumerian religion. So basic beliefs of the Sumerians. Okay, so first, their basic belief is number 18, our note, which is polytheism. Polytheism. Poly, meaning many, and theism is the belief in or belief in God, or a God. So polytheism is the belief or the worship of many gods. Polytheism is the worship of many gods. Poly meaning many, and theism is the worship of God or a God. Number 19, monotheism. Okay, so we have polytheism, the worship of many gods. And then we have monotheism, which is the worship of one God. Monotheism, the worship of one God. So if polytheism is the worship of one God, what do you think someone that worshiped many gods would be called? Be a polytheist. Polytheist is someone who worships many gods. And then monotheism is the study of one God, or the worship of one God. So monotheist would be someone that believes in only one God. Another belief they had was humanism. And we've kind of mentioned this before, but humanism is the belief that men are gods. Kind of the problem that we had back in the Bible tells us, and in history, some of those first recordings, when we go back to the Tower of Babel, a lot of it was caused, and even back to Adam and Eve, by the small idea kind of humanism. Humanism is that belief that men are gods, or the idea that we, as a person, as man, flesh, can do whatever we want, and there's no consequence or rules or guidelines that we're supposed to follow. That I'm my own God, I make my own path, I do my own thing, and I don't refer or look to the creator or someone that created. I just believe I am. And that's what a humanist, that's what they'd be called, someone that believes in something, or humanism, the belief that we are our own God, that I get to do because I am my own God. I can tell other people to do what I want because I am my own God. So moving along with that, so again we have polytheism, the worship of many gods, monotheism, the worship of one God, and humanism is the belief that men are gods. Number 21, and going with that actually, forgot to mention, Romans 1:23 has a phrase that says, the Sumerians were also humanists, like I said, for they had made men into gods, changing the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man. So again, Romans 1:23 telling us the glory of the uncorruptible God, or our God, how he's perfect and he's holy, he's righteous, he's sovereign, he's just, right? All these attributes God is, right? But man with humanism has the belief that it brings that uncorruptible God and it makes corruptible man in the same image, or God into the image of us to make us equal, whether it's lifting us up or tearing him down to make us equal. Abraham believed that men were created in the image of God, by God. But the Sumerian gods were created in the image of men, by men. Okay? So in the Bible, with Abraham, he followed God, someone that led him out of the land he grew up in, and he followed the God. But Sumerian, they followed their gods. These gods they made up and worshiped. They made idols and things like that. The Sumerians made their God resemble humans in actions as well as in appearance. Unlike Abraham's God, which is the God, of infinite perfection and power, the Sumerian gods displayed pretty jealously envy and fear. The first one we're going to talk about, and the only God first God we're going to talk about of the Sumerians is Anu. Anu, note number 21, Anu was the Sumerian god of the sky. See, as Christians, and that we should believe in the God, capital G, he is the God of all creation. He created all. He's all-powerful, all-knowing. And he's so many things that we can't even understand completely. But what the Sumerians did is they tried to make, here's a God of this, and here's a God of this. Things that they can control, or they would make an image that resembled them. So it made them feel like we're the gods of our own creation of the earth. But in reality, they weren't. So Anu was the Sumerian god of the sky. Sumerian god of the sky. He supposedly ruled the other gods, but much like a human ruler, was constantly threatened by rebellion. These imagined gods met annually to decide what they would cause to happen on the earth for the rest of the year. A dissenting god might plot against a decision. These false beliefs had a powerful influence on the lives of the Sumerian people. Okay, so like I said, because they made these gods, they made up, these gods would fight for their own power, just like humans, right? Humans want power. They're prideful. We're prideful in our nature, so we always want power. And back then, a lot of times it'd be fighting over either territory or fields or animals and things for them that can profit their city or nation or community. And so what they would do is their gods would also fight just like humans would. So we have Anu. Now we would have, just like we kind of have church here, right? The church is the temple of the God, right? We're supposed to worship and learn about and grow and apply in our life what the Bible can teach us, which is the Word of God. Just like that, there was places called ziggurats. Ziggurats. Now ziggurats, note number 22, ziggurats, Ziggurats, are towers built in tiers of stages. Each stage, smaller than the one beneath, all atop a large mound of clay or debris. So basically, imagine a square or a rectangle type structure, and you'd have stairs from the ground leading up, maybe a stair in the front, and you have a structure of a large square. And then you would have stairs leading up, and then a smaller square on top of the big square, and then a smaller square. And then at the top, you'd kind of have like a little mound or an area to walk into, which would be a temple for one of these false gods. So ziggurat are towers built in tiers or stages, each stage smaller than the one beneath, all atop a large mound of clay or debris. Another false god of the Sumerians was Nana. And with the ziggurat at Ur, remember Ur we talked about those three main places. The ziggurat at Ur during Abraham's time was 200 feet long, 150 feet wide, 70 feet high, and crowned with a shrine, and like we're talking about now, with a shrine to the moon god Nana. Nana was the Sumerian god of the moon. So those are some of their false gods. So we have the moon god and the god of the sky. But also we have kings, religion, and politics. Each city had a king who ruled over the people, right? Just like America, we have a president. It's not quite a king, but someone that sits on the top and kind of is supposed to be in charge of our nation or country. Now a king, each country had, or city had, a king who ruled over the people of the city, but also served as a slave of the city's god. So a lot of times these kings would represent that city's god. So say a city, they worship the moon god, Nana. Well, the king is supposed to be the one in communication, the only one in communication with this false god. And so maybe the king would use as a lie or something to say, oh, the mighty king or god Nana wants you to all give me $100, right? And so the people would say, oh, we have to obey the moon god Nana. And so they would all give the king $100. That's just an example, but that's how things worked with the communication from the king to the people. That's one way he used his power. Now, one king we're going to talk about is King Ur-Nammu. Note number 24, Ur-Nammu, U-R-N-A-M-M-U, was the king of Ur. So this nation Ur we're talking about, who helped build the ziggurat. That ziggurat to the moon god Nana, Ur-Nammu. Ur-Nammu of Ur, for example, show him as a worker building the ziggurat. The source of the king's power over other men was the special relationship that he was believed to have with the god of the city. Again, he was named king and stuff because he supposedly had this special relationship with this false god. Using religion as a political tool, the king demanded obedience by claiming to be the particular slave favored by the god. Okay, so imagine this whole city or little nation, they're all working hard, right, as a nation together. But there'd be one man saying, oh, I am the most liked of our God. And he would be the one that the nation or city would refer to as king. Anyone who refused to support this king risked bringing the God's wrath upon the whole city. So a lot of times, say, one of you say I become this chosen slave and we serve the false god of the sun, right? And I come into the class and I say, all right, the false sun god told me that you're all supposed to bring me food tomorrow, right? And then one of you are like, well, no, I'm not bringing you food. Well, a lot of times the whole city would look at, oh, you can't disobey or else the God will punish the whole city. So sometimes maybe that one person will be punished by torture or put into prison or anything like that, maybe even killed. So again, a lot of times they're all workers, all equal men, but one man will proclaim, I am the highest. I am the slave loved of our God, so I am king. And so they would serve and obey him. Another thing we're going to look at is the business, commerce, and taxes. The business, commerce, and taxes. Sumerian temples also served as commercial and business centers, right? So a lot of times all the trade from city to city, because this is a large area, was for commercial and business centers. The god of the city owned everything, including agriculture, production. So farmers brought offerings to the temple while a host of craftsmen worked on the temple, making things to please the god. And of course, the god's chief servant. So this whole time, trade and worship and sacrifices all done at this building, the ziggurat. So our next thing, struggle between the cities. The Sumerians also tried to imitate their gods. For example, kings often aspired to rule over other cities, just as some gods wish to rule over other gods. As a result, there was continual warfare between the cities of Sumer. Okay, so all these cities, imagine all these cities worshiping this different false god, right? Whether it's the fake god of the ground or the grass or the strawberries, any random god they would choose of an object, usually of something of more value, like the sun or moon or ocean. They would choose their god, and they would say, oh, our god's at war with your god. And so there's always, and just like with pride of man, really is probably just man wanting to conquer man. And so there's continuous warfare in all of these cities trying to gain on each other, gain ground, to conquer, and with conquest. And with that, the Sumerians' vain efforts to elevate themselves, right? Remember that humanistic belief. They wanted to proclaim their God to everyone, whether they're monotheists or if they said you have to believe all the gods, and polytheists, they'd push their idealism onto other cities. And so they would fight in the name of their fake God to gain other nations. That was their excuse. Sumerians' vain efforts to elevate themselves by building a great society without the true God, the one true God, was the first of world's history. Many repetitions of mistake made at the Tower of Babel. Okay, so we're seeing kind of the same thing here that happened at the Tower of Babel with these different cities of Sumer. One man in Sumer, okay, remember we mentioned his name already. One man in Sumer, Abraham, believed in and obeyed the one true God and began a journey toward the land of God's promise. Okay, so one day, this man named Abraham was called upon God. He was called to leave his nation. And maybe at first he's like, man, that'd be weird. Like, I've grown up here, right? We don't really want to leave our home. But he was called by God. Someone maybe Abraham didn't really know at the time. He might have knew of God, of the God, capital G, but he didn't really know much about maybe this God. So he packed up all his things and he left. He obeyed the command. And that was the beginning of a relationship that we'll see in time that grew throughout the Bible. So with Abraham's faith, okay, although Abraham left behind an impressive culture, he received from God much more. He did not just receive all this culture and blessing from God, but he received much more. God promised Abraham that his name would be great, for he would be the father of a great nation. A nation that would be a blessing to the whole world. God would protect and defend it, cursing its enemies and blessing its friends. Abraham believed God and began a journey of faith, just like when he left his land of Ur by faith to follow God and began a journey of faith. He did not know precisely where he would settle, and he must have feared the unknown dangers of the land he was entering. There were to be many trials of Abraham's faith, as indeed there had been for the faith of the nations he fathered. Okay, one time Abraham, he had a son. His name was Isaac. And God had commanded Abraham to take his only son up to this mountain. And he said, Abraham, they go up to this mountain and they don't have a sacrifice. And so God tells him, Abraham, sacrifice your son Isaac. And Abraham might have been like, in his mind, but God, it's my only son. And might have had some inner turmoil, but in the end, he obeyed. He put his only son, Isaac, on the altar. And just as Abraham was going to sacrifice his son, God sent an angel to stop Abraham. and he provided a lamb to sacrifice. How much faith would you have to do something like that? Imagine your parents sacrificing you because God commanded them, right? But our God is not a God like that. He just was testing his faith. And just like today, God tests our faith in maybe ways we don't understand. He tells us to do something, and so we just have to take that step. And then he'll say, all right, I just wanted to see if you would take it. Now I see you have faith in me, so here, let me bless you. And like in Abraham's life, he provided a sacrifice. Abraham's faith would lay the foundation for new alternative to the Sumerian pattern of rebellion against God that continued in all of Mesopotamia. Remember, Sumerian, they had their different beliefs. They believed in polyism or polytheism, monotheism, humanism, right? The belief of many gods, of one false God. They believed in themselves, that they were their own God. And in this, they denied the existence of the one true God, the creator of all the universe, as what we talked about, the all-powerful, holy, righteous, sovereign, all-knowing God that has created the whole world, because they wanted to neglect him. Remember, it's that same concept at the Tower of Babel. They were building this large tower to make themselves equal, try to make themselves equal to God. They thought, if we can build a building so high, we'll reach God and we'll be equal with him. But they were false. They couldn't do that. It's impossible for us as man to be equal to God, our creator. He's the one that made the stars in the sky. He made the breeze in the air. He made the waters in the ocean, the rain that falls. He made everything we can see, and that there's no way we can attain that. But they would deny it, whether they would serve and follow and believe in these false gods or in themselves. So Abraham was the one to change that, to change the culture of the people of Sumerian. So that's that in the book. So we'll continue with just one last note, and then we'll be done, and I will assign the homework, and I will be down there shortly. Number 25, it says, kings were considered to have a special relationship with the city's God. Like we talked about, I've already talked about that, how the kings would say they were the beloved slave, right? So kings were considered to have a special relationship with this false city god. And lastly, number 26, Sumerian temples also served as commercial and business centers. And we covered that already, but just to have it in there in your notes. Sumerian temples also served as commercial and business centers. They're places that were used for trade and commerce. But tonight's homework is going to be, sorry, let me pull it up. It disappeared on me. But it's going to be reading page 13 through 15. Okay, not all of 15. You're only reading that first section before the section review. So pages 13, so basically you're reading 2.3, pages 13 through 15. And then you're doing page 15, questions 1 through 5. Distant learners, if you need notes and I didn't get them to you, remember you can text, email, or My Schools Works. I'll try to get to those to you as soon as possible. I'm doing my best. Just communicate with me, and you can help me to help you. If you need anything with homework or lesson plans, also let me know. This week on Wednesday, we have another quiz, so be ready for that. We'll review for that tomorrow, but be ready for that. I'll be returning some homework and quizzes for those who are downstairs in the classroom. Remember, distant learners, you can send me pictures of your work so I can get grades in, but keep those hard copies. Do not throw them away. Keep them and turn them in this Friday, and then starting this Friday, every week on Friday, pick up the stuff for the next week and turn in everything from the previous week. We'll see you tomorrow. Hope you guys have a wonderful day.